It is our distinct pleasure to continue the Billy Liucci car wash, as this man has been inundated
In the
and
car.
flooded with media requests today. He is actually in the car. Of course, Billy runs TexAgs.com. Like Chaz Michaels is figure skating, Billy is Texas A&M. Okay, so who better to talk to then about this Jimbo Fisher fire? Billy, what's up, man? Thank you so much for making some time for the Snaps boys today.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't miss it. This was y'all were the first ones to reach out after the
Okay,
like within minutes, and I was too disheveled and unorganized at the time trying to keep up with. I mean, the phone we've had a lot of crazy days, covering A&M, particularly realignment. Couple coaching changes. I've done 5 of them, but I mean, since the day and age where, things like y'all show here and the SEC network and everything like that. This is the second one. You went from Sherman to Sumlin to Jimbo, and now this. So it's been this day, yesterday, the 24 hours, probably the craziest I've had.
I want to ask you, as a person with Jimbo, like, do people generally like him, like as a person in the community, getting along with him, and kind of what was your relationship? How was your relationship with him?
My relationship with him was great. I mean, it got like, I've never had a confrontation or disagreement with him. We had a disagreement. It was kind of like last year after App State. I was pretty opinionated. I think he kind of went cold for a while. But it was not a thing. Like, it was just like, I'll let you cool off. I wasn't happy with, certain things. And so I'll cool off, you cool. And it was fine. Like, literally never addressed, never. And it was like nothing had ever happened. He was really good to talk to for 6 years. He was a wealth of knowledge, kind of had an open line to him. Enjoyed talking to him. Respect the hell out of him. Like him as a person. I was on the fence on if he should have another year or not. And I understand why they made the move. I do. And we'll talk about that. I'm sure, obviously we're going to talk about that in a minute. But
yes, in
the community, Jimbo's not a guy that had much of a presence. He just wasn't real active. He was coach, go home with his family, go to the ranch with his son, with Ethan, or if his both sons were in town. But generally, like, he was work to home and not really out there. And I'm not saying that like it's a bad thing. It just is what it is. So, and as far as A&M, I think in the building, in that building, he was probably a harder guy to work for in terms of, a grinder. And I'm not saying that, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. So,
Billy, what about this? Because generally in these situations, there's kind of a straw that breaks the camel's back sort of moment. I mean, hell, in this game, like, that's kind of what happened to Zach Arnett, right? Even if it was inevitable, it got to a point where it's like, okay, this is too much. This almost feels a bit more like death by 1,000 cuts. Kind of take us through tell me if that's accurate, and then kind of take us through that process. Like when was this decision finally made to go ahead and commit the resources and move on?
I think you're right. It was cumulative. It really was. It's just like too much of the same, too much of just not quite being able to get over the hump. But I think where you really can go back to are kind of 2 dates, both in Oxford. I think 2 years ago, Texas A&M was about to turn that corner. They had lost to Mississippi State and Arkansas early, but then they beat Bama. Then they beat number 11 Auburn at home. They went into Oxford ranked 11th, and that was a year after the 9-1 top 4 finish. Won a New Year's Six bowl. They were slight favorites over Ole Miss. They had a chance to take that lead, 1st and goal in the 4th quarter, a drop touchdown pass that would have given them the lead from down 15-0. They end up losing that game. Then they go a couple weeks later, and T-Bob, you guys know, it was a bad LSU team, and they get beat by none. They get beat by none other than Max Johnson, right there at the end, the final 30 seconds. Had they won those 2 games, which they should have, we're not saying had they beaten Bama and Georgia, had they won those 2 games, you're back-to-back New Year's Six, you're like 20-3 over 2 years, and I think the world. And they, by the way, they were putting together that number 1 class of all time. So I think the whole world changes at that point for A&M football, for the culture, for the mindset of like, here's how we win, here's how we do things, young guys. Instead, 8-4, they don't play in a bowl game that year. Then I think the other one was 2 weeks ago at Ole Miss. It wasn't that there's no shame in losing on the final play to the number 11 team in the country on the road. But like T-Bob, like you said, it was the 1,000th cut. I think that was the 1,000th cut. And I think,
and it's 3 years in a row to Lane at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like even
3
with
years
last
in a
year's
row,
bad Ole Miss team. Yeah.
It's 9 road losses in a row, 6-12 in your last 18 against FBS, 10-21, 10-11 in your last 21. Everything added up. 5 in a row against the Mississippi schools. And oh, by the way, there was a long ago scheduled Board of Regents meeting that Thursday. And by the way,
that wasn't an emergency meeting. That was already happening. Oh, wow.
No, that was long. I said it before the game. I said, you better win this game. There happens to be a board meeting the next week. People are pissed about Tennessee. They're not going to like Lane Kiffin running his mouth all week because what he was saying, a lot of Aggies believed. He goes way too far personal when it comes to Jimbo. And I'll say this about Jimbo. He never mentioned Lane Kiffin until that presser when he called him a clown. People love Lane because he's funny and fun. Lane, he went out and made the initial accusation of Jimbo and A&M paying all these players, and that's the only way they're getting play. So Jimbo was simply defending himself. Lane takes it, I think, too far personally, but there was truth in what he says, and that's where the dig really comes in with Jimbo and A&M doing so much less with more. And a lot of Aggies felt that way that make decisions. He needed to go win that football game. And when they're laughing about it on College Game Day an hour before kickoff, I got a lot of phone calls and a lot of people were pissed saying they better win this game today. Yep. So it doesn't matter how competitive it was, that was the 1,000th cut, T-Bob, in my opinion.
Was the money ever truly an issue? Like, was there ever like that was ever going to be a problem, or was more of we can figure that out? It's truly a matter of do we want him back or not?
It was we don't want to have to figure that out, but if we have to, we will. And so, yeah, I think the question was, do we have the money? I need y'all to give us that answer. If we have the money, this is not, hey, Aaron, we need $5 million more from you. T-Bob, can you give us 10? Now we're at 15. Can we go? It wasn't that. It was, do we have the money now already allocated? Now, if they want to go hire Dan Lanning, which I don't think is going to be, I hear people talk like that's a $20 million buyout, and you're going to pay him over $10 million a year plus Jimbo's buyout. I think people need to recalibrate where this target's going to be sitting. But let's say they did. Then you'd probably have to go to an individual guy and say, you want this guy that bad? We're going to need help with the buyout. With this, it wasn't, Aaron. This was, do we have the money? The 12th Man Foundation, the athletic department, and the answer is yes, we can make this work. When that happened, okay, then Thursday they decided they were going to do it.
Was there anything behind the giant check being presented at halftime? In case people missed it, 12th man at halftime of the game is clearly flaunting a $120 million check that they are handing over to Ross Bjork, basically saying, look, man, here's your money for your buyout and for hiring the new guy.
They do that every year. They're like, but that was an insane coincidence. And I really think it was a coincidence because I know the people and how they think, and they would actually do the exact opposite probably and say, yeah, we better not do that because because the people knew that this was going to go down, Sunday morning. So yeah, I think it was actually the exact opposite. They were probably like, "Oops," as that
I
meme
mean, I will
started
say
going
this, though,
around.
Billy, it's a flex, bro. I mean, I never seen $120 million check handed over.
That
I mean,
ain't a
that's
Happy
pretty fucking
Gilmore check,
insane.
is it? I promise you, I've got a check in here. I've got a check in here somewhere. Look, I got my, everything's just sitting here randomly. I bet you if you go through this console, there's a check, and it ain't 120 million. But yeah, that wasn't Happy Gilmore running around with that one. That was the real deal.
Bill, you bring up some of the coaches, and I've been a big fan of Lane. Lane's beat, as you allude to, is beating A&M 3 times with lesser talent. Like, there is a talent gap. Lane has made it happen. Lane's going to win probably 10 wins again this season, the second time in 3 years that he's led Ole Miss to 10-win seasons. Is he the front runner in your mind? Like, who is the guy that they want? Because if you're going to spend $76 million to send someone away, you kind of have to know that there's one or two guys we want to get, and we've already had those discussions possibly.
I don't think there is, Aaron. It's crazy.
Wow.
I don't think necessarily
crazy.
it sounds. Yeah, I mean, part of me thinks it sounds crazy. Part of me understands, like, they're going to conduct a full search. They had Jimbo hired before they did it. They were essentially, for all intents and purposes, Kevin Sumlin was going to be kind of a layup for Texas A&M. You knew it was Arizona State, UCLA for the head coach at U of H right down the road who had worked here. This time it's not that. I think it's going to be a wide open, legitimate search.
Right.
I could see them reaching up to grab somebody if they have to. I could see them trying to find, I mean, and it's a bad name because he's not doing well at Florida right now, but like a Billy Napier, someone that's doing a really good job elsewhere that feels like a great fit. People throw out Trailer at UTSA. There's obviously Mike Elko at Duke's going to get real consideration. I've heard.
Would they go like Chadwell, like a Chadwell route, or is that beneath them?
I don't think it's beneath them. I don't expect that, but that would be a name that I bet they'd look at and say, I wonder what he could do here. Cliff Kingsbury's name, not through A&M circles, but people were asking about that.
You got to explain that one, bro, because that seems like it'd be a fucking disaster to me.
Well, I don't think out of all those names we mentioned, Elko would be the one that I would think would be the most likely candidate out of all those that they actually, let's say you narrow it down to 3 or 4, whatever. I think Trailer would be on there too at UTSA. Hell, I don't think they'll go this route, but I think the name will come up in the conversations, at least early on. Like, what about Tulane? Willie Fritz. And I know that, again, I'm throwing random, but that's what they're going to do at first. Not random, but they're going to say, here, Leipold at Kansas. Here are the names. Like, what do we think these guys would do here with these resources? I think you have to be really careful because I think A&M is one of these jobs where you can win massively, but they haven't. But don't just say we're trying to do better than what Jimbo's done recently record-wise, or that what Sumlin did record-wise, because that ain't good enough. So you don't need to go hire someone that you think can win 9 games and 10 games a year. That's not the goal. And I talked to Mac and Cube this morning, and Greg was like, I feel like our expectations right at A&M. And I said, absolutely they are. Just because what you've done historically does not mean it should hinder what you can do and strive to do. So, like, what you're capable of doing, history doesn't matter. It just means you have to alter history. You need to make better hires. You need to maybe, and I'm not advocating it. I like the big fish hire. I like the proven Power 5 guy, but maybe that ain't it. And I'd like to see them go get somebody pretty proven. Lane Kiffin, though, I don't think he'd be an option. And you think about Kiffin.
Oh, wow.
You think about Kiffin, Stoops.
Just not a right fit. Just not a right fit, Billy. Like, you don't think his personality would gel?
Yeah. I mean, I think he's done a badass job.
Incredible job. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But
I kind of think Lane's waiting on the Alabama job. I mean, that's what everybody says. I don't know.
And by the way, you don't forget your AD's Ross Bjork from Ole Miss. So. But Lane, think about Lane. Think about, like, say, a Mike Gundy. Think about a Mark Stoops. Right there, you would think in a normal universe, A&M can go hire Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, or even Kentucky's coach. And I know they've turned down jobs, but if A&M came calling with that giant check, what was left? Well, even with what's left over from that check of the
Yeah.
120
Yeah.
or whatever, come with the leftovers after Jimbo with that check and go drive it to Oxford, Stillwater, or Lexington, and you've got yourself a coach.
Yep.
You're talking about paying one of those guys even like you might have to go 9 plus 10 million a year to get them, more than you were paying Jim. So it's that's a tough one for that amount of money. Same with DeBoer at Washington, who I think's done an incredible job.
The chat wants Johnny Manziel, Billy. That's what the chat wants. Give the people what they want.
The Aggies want
Give Johnny the reins.
Yeah, hey, he would burn it down spectacularly, though. At least we know that.
Look, I got a name. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say the Aggies want one of the Dans. Okay.
Okay, so let's arrive there because Dan Campbell is the dream, right? And obviously it's like, well, I mean, I read this morning the Lions are like 15-4 since last Halloween. So people are gonna be like, why the fuck would he leave Detroit? But like that would also be the most Texas A&M thing ever. I mean, nobody believes in Texas A&M like Aggies. Nobody loves the brand as much as A&M Aggies do. Obviously those conversations will take place. You know Dan very well. That's your partner. I mean, is there anything there?
I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've learned to never say never in this thing. We all have. I think Dan is so happy, so grateful, so loyal to everybody in Detroit, the ownership, the whole organization, that community, that city. What they're doing there is, you mentioned it, 15. The Detroit Lions, man.
I know. Bro, they've won one playoff game since the 50s.
I told him the last time we talked, I go, man, you're the best Lions coach. You're the second best Lions coach ever behind Wayne Fonts, Aguado from Ace Ventura. But they don't like that. Is that the last time they won a playoff game? Was like Barry Sanders and Wayne Fonts, and he's got them. There's a world where they could go to NFC Championship game or even a Super Bowl. So I think people look at the salary and they go, he's making $4 million. Jimbo was making, $9 million. Detroit would bump him up, and they will anyway after this year. B, it really ain't about that for Dan. And if he ever left the NFL to come to college, it would be Texas A&M. Yeah. I just think this conversation would be a lot different if the Lions were, 3-6 and
but would they want him if they were 3-6 though too? Like, would he even be in the conversation? That's the
maybe, but probably not. Like I said,
look, long term, this is actually kind of maybe the best thing for A&M, because like if Campbell goes on to have success in the NFL and if the other guy doesn't hit, then he would be excited. Like there's still a long term vision where Dan Campbell ends up potentially as the A&M head coach.
I can see him being the next guy.
Can you believe that we're this deep in the NFL season? Well, check it out. We got to make every second count. And with the DraftKings Sportsbook app, you can make the most out of every game day. You can bet on your favorite teams for a shot at winning big bucks. And right now, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on any NFL matchup. That's right. Any NFL matchup right now, $5, you get $150 instantly in bonus bets. You want to bet your hometown team, you're going to be away. It's all there for you. And remember, if you're returning customers, always great game day deals and boosts and offers going down on the DraftKings app. And you can always do your multi-game or same-game parlay. So get in on the action with the DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. You download the app now. Use the code T-Bob. Okay, if you're a new customer, TBOB, new customers, $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on the NFL. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code T-Bob. The crown is yours.
Billy, I want to ask you, you bring up the A&M has it to win. Like, we can't look at the past to determine that this team is not capable of winning a national championship. You have the resources, you have the facilities. You're on the field at all these games. Like, you see A&M and how they match up against Alabama, who they've won and been in games with for the past 3 years against LSU. Like, they're playing the best of the best year in and year out. When you look at the rosters in person, is there a difference? Like, is this team capable of winning with the right coaching staff next year?
Yeah, well, depending on the portal, depending on who goes
true.
out, who you hire. You better hire a guy. Like, I've heard people go, "Wait, we've seen a ball coach. We need a guy that just knows how to run a program and win, and was won everywhere he's been and done." If it means elite, if it means more with less versus less, I'm saying no. You better get a recruiting dude. It doesn't have to be his number one asset, but he better have enough contacts in the profession where you can put a badass recruiting staff around him. Because by recruiting, I mean getting here on the job in a couple weeks, hopefully, and going up to everyone on that roster, along with some NIL money, that war chest there, and saying, stay. Here's why.
Yeah.
You better be a
Yeah.
salesman. You better have people believe in what you're selling. Because if you can keep this team together, and if he's that good that he can go out with the excitement of a new hire and go get key pieces in the portal, this team could be ridiculous in year one. I've watched them do this, guys, and y'all have too, throughout the SEC time in terms of talent level. Jimbo came in here and he got the talent level where it needs to be. They can match up and compete with anyone. This team in particular, they've struggled on the O-line. It ain't talent related. It's just not. Where they do lack a little bit, I think, is they need to continue to upgrade the secondary, just the raw talent. And I know Jimbo and Durkin were really excited about this freshman class that we haven't seen a ton of. But that secondary, some of those guys, you look at the Georgias, the Alabamas. Oddly enough, T-Bob, LSU's hurting there right now too. When LSU and A&M play,
are they?
There? Not anymore.
It's crazy. But that's the one spot where I would say you really need to do that in a hurry. But everywhere else, man, they're loaded out.
Yeah.
Help me out with this, because ever since Bear Bryant left in the 50s, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to go be the coach at Alabama, all that bullshit. He leaves. It's a bit, it almost has the feeling of like a Babe type of curse. Yes. Because A&M has all the elements. We talk about it all the time. Facilities, geographical recruiting advantages, unlimited money, premier athletes. What is, in an A&M fan's mind or view, what is the dark voodoo that's kind of holding it back from the ultimate dreams being realized?
Maybe they just need to bring them back to Junction and do training camp in the rocks and stones and 110-degree heat at Junction with no water, like the Bear did. I mean, no, seriously, like that. I don't know, and maybe it does have to do with that. Maybe A&M's trying to get too cute with the, not cute. I'm exactly like A&M can. There's nothing wrong with going out and hiring Jimbo Fisher. Some people wanted to make that a crime. Some people got their feelings hurt because A&M wasn't a blue blood, and they reached out and went and did something that a lot of people would have wanted to do and couldn't. And they said the same thing when A&M left Texas to come to the SEC. They said the same thing, when A&M built the stadium and spent all the money, and they love to see it fail because of that. But I do think A&M, it would be nice to see A&M not be this program that people love to hate, because usually that comes with incredible success, like the Yankees, the Alabama, or Golden State
Patriots.
Warriors. Yeah, the Patriots, Bill Belichick and Brady. Usually that comes with that. And for A&M, it's like between paying to get Jimbo, leaving for the SEC,
the
Yell Leaders. The Yell Leaders, which
we like the Yell Leaders, to be clear. Snaps is pro Yell Leader. I love all the quirky traditions. It's why college football's awesome.
It's
the
cool.
One thing I
it's
clown
so funny.
A&M about, the one thing I clown A&M, and you know this, Billy, is the blowing bubbles at the baseball game. It's the only thing I disagree with.
That doesn't even bother me at all. To me, and you're coming to a game, and I'm gonna make sure that I'm gonna set it up. We're like, Aaron, we gotta get you guys down here and get Jacob and CD, and I'm gonna plant a bubble blower with CD, and when A&M scores a run, it's gonna be like right in T-Bob's face. But
hey now.
my thing that with the Yo leaders is the only thing I ask. I think it makes it so unique and so awesome when people come in, they're just like fascinated by it. And they also make the in-game environment wild.
Yes,
you know,
I remember I
know.
went in 7th grade and it blew my fucking mind. I had never seen anything like it. The coordination of the fans.
I just wish they'd stop shooting those videos at yell practice from with all the people behind you and the sound turned off, where it looks like they're doing that in an empty stadium with no noise and just nobody there.
True.
It looks like some kind of training video. That is a weird element to it that I think makes it look 75,000 times worse. But yeah, the Yo leaders are awesome to be at A&M. It's a huge tradition, but I think maybe you don't need all of that. And A&M's you know, in terms of going off with this big splash and all this pomp and circumstance. But I'd rather A&M not be hated for things that are made up, like, oh, they shouldn't go hire this guy, or who do they think they are going. The only time they should have been hated was when Johnny was running all over everyone, flipping double rods and, you know, beating your teams. That's when I think they could play the villain and embrace it.
Yeah.
Now they're like playing the villain without the, you know,
the excitement.
Lane Kiffin gets to play the good guy on this. Everybody thought Nick Saban was in the right when Jimbo went after him, when Saban sat there and said, oh, they bought their whole roster, as if Alabama football had never paid for a player under Nick Saban pre-NIL. So that whole thing, you know, but yet somehow A&M and Jimbo kept being the bad guy. And I do think I'd like to see them get some kind of higher end that maybe you could turn that around. Maybe with that, some of the mojo shifts.
Was there a worry from the fan base of Texas is looking good? Texas could win the Big 12. Texas could be in the playoffs. And Sark seems to have things going the right direction, and they join the SEC next year. Like, was that part of the equation too?
Yeah, I don't think that came up like, hey, Texas is doing good, we need to make a change. I do think you're saying Texas is coming in the league, OU's coming in the league. You know, competition for recruits is about to ramp up to a whole nother level. And if we don't have our act together and you start losing head-to-heads with Texas, then this is, you know, then that's where it really can turn, where you lose any kind of grip you've got, any kind of shared grip. It certainly factors into your thinking of like that sense of urgency. And Texas fans walk around and they think that's some kind of, that's some kind of revelation. Like, oh my God, Texas is having a really good year. I will tell you, the teams they're playing are horrifically bad, but they're the ones that went into Tuscaloosa and won. So you can't really, you lose the right to complain. If Oregon goes and beats Washington in the Pac-12 championship game, I will have something to put against them, and it won't be in maroon and white. It'll be in whatever kind of damn green and yellow or whatever color they have. But for now, Texas did what no one else has done. So I don't care who all they've played that are frauds and how they're barely beating these bad teams right now. They've won. But that doesn't affect A&M from the standpoint of, oh my God, they're having a great year. I think it just is all cumulative, and you do have to look at it and go, they got momentum right now as a program, and they're coming into the league, and you're going to start playing them every year. You better have your trajectory pointing in the right way. It only adds to it, and you'd be lying if you said it didn't. It adds to that sense of urgency that already exists when you look at Bama and LSU and Georgia, and you got to watch Auburn and now Venables and Sark. If you're not buckled up, the biggest fear I think for A&M and any of these teams that are living in that middle ground in the SEC, where everybody just each year is trying to jockey from Tennessee's in there too, right? From 5th to 7th in the league, 8th. Those 4 or 5 teams in that crowded middle every year. The fear is that you lose your footing and you look up one day and you're Arkansas or you're South Carolina. That's what teams like A&M, Tennessee, Auburn, Florida, that you can't get over. And LSU, T-Bob, is, they stay right above. They feel like they're flirting with it, and then bam, here comes 2019. Then they're flirting with it again. Bam, Brian Kelly does a great job of Jaden Daniels was incredible last year. But LSU has stayed above it. A&M and those other teams we mentioned have stayed below it. But if you don't get this hire right, if you're A&M or Tennessee or Florida, with Napier, they're kind of thinking the same thing right now. You run the risk of falling down to that next tier, and damn, that's a long road up.
And so this is my last question here, Billy. I don't, because of everything we've spent, last half hour talking about, I don't know my life that I've ever felt that I've seen a coaching search with this much pressure on it. The price tag, the expectation, the competition, just everything, right?
Yeah.
Do A&M fans trust Ross Bjork to take on that mantle and be the one to lead this charge?
Yeah, I mean, and the fans, I think yesterday he did a nice job of winning over a lot of the fan base with kind of his press conference and what he said and kind of the process that they were going to go. What really matters is, do the powers that be at A&M trust him with that process? And I think the answer is yes, because I don't think they make this move if they didn't. But because I think maybe you hang on to Jimbo for another year, and maybe it was Ross that, exit stage left prior to the season. So you could say, hey, we're going to put in the AD.
Yeah, you're back. I mean, that's a good point. You're backing Ross. That's a inherent kind of affirmation of him.
And I think he'll have
now letting him do the search.
Yeah, and I think he'll have help, T-Bob. I don't think they're going to say, hey, it's all you, get back to us. They have they're one of the schools that has one of those search firms under contract, but also I think there'll be a small group, a very small group, like 3 or 4 people that are going to kind of go make this hire together with Ross leading that group.
Hell yeah, man. It's going to be
I'd hire you guys. Us 3 and Ross, I think we could
come
do
on,
a
baby.
decent job. It ain't rocket
I'll take half. I'll take half the money too. Give me a $50 million buyout. $30 million.
Well, no, I don't think he meant to hire us as coaches there. And I think he meant hiring us for the search team.
No, I want to be a coach. I want to be a coach. I want to be hired as a coach.
You can pay me as a consultant. You can pay me to be a consultant on the coaching search, Billy.
I've seen the T-Bob pregame speeches. I've seen those. We could be good.
Yeah, they don't work out too well, Billy. They don't work out too well.
Shut the fuck up, Aaron.
They don't work out too well.
Why don't you go worry about barking at other adults like a freaking weirdo, dude? Aaron just feeling himself. Aaron just feeling himself. Kids like Jared.
Hey, T-Bob, what's weirder? Yell leader? What's weirder? Yell leaders or people barking at each other?
People barking at each other without a doubt.
Okay.
Especially if they get on all fours, like the ones that crawl
like
up
that guy.
to you.
Oh my god, that guy barking.